Hey guys, for our first edition of Threat Assessment of 2022, I wanted to make a much needed video about the subject of women on the autism spectrum, because I know that most of the guys who watch my videos are probably feeling pretty targeted at this point because most of my content is surrounding the subject of autism and incildom and the manosphere and things like that. And I wanted to clear up that it's not that I'm trying to target men in this way that it might appear, it's just that I'm more apprehensive to talk about the things that I'm going to talk about in this video, despite having a lot that I want to say about it, because of the political sensitivities and the censorship surrounding a lot of the subject matter that I'm going to get into. And I think you'll get a better understanding of that as we proceed into threat assessment. Sperg girls.
I said eat girls, get the bullet. Really isn't any nice way to put it.
The first order of business is to discuss the fact that women with autism even exist. For many decades, people had viewed autism as being a strictly male mental disorder. And people have come to the realization that it's not that the disorder isn't present in women, it's just that it presents itself differently. And I think that women with autism are a group that hasn't had the best representation over the years. And I think that we've grown to have a bit of a negative reputation for being generally attention-seeking, overly political and obnoxious, and racist on the internet. And none of that is particularly good. I do want to say that if I were to personally choose a representative for this community, I would have to go with Temple Grandin because of her strong sense of ethics and her lack of an enabling attitude, which I think is so horribly abundant when it comes to this community. And I think it's really unfortunate that her hug box that she's designed has grown to have such a negative association with the Tumblr-esque crowd, because that kind of mentality goes so directly against her character and her teachings on this subject matter.
Now, in the 50s, every child was taught social skills in a much more structured way. And today, that's not the case. Now, the so-called normal kids, they pick it up, but the autistic kids have got to be taught.
She's a person who really believes in challenging yourself and working through your disorder rather than allowing it to encompass your whole life. And I think it's so tremendously brave that she speaks out against having this victim mentality. And she's someone who I would probably admire for the rest of my life for that.
You gotta put your foot down sometimes. Some brats deserve to die.
There are a variety of resources that I'm going to link down below for you guys that will get more into the specifics of how autism actually presents itself differently in males as opposed to females. But for the sake of this video and honoring my commitment to even out the discussion of men on this channel, I'm going to focus on what I personally think is the most significant distinguishment between men and women on the spectrum. And that is that research has shown that women will put significantly more effort into masking their autistic traits, and that they will respond marginally better as opposed to men when it comes to a variety of different social therapies.
They also believe that girls are much better at noticing and mimicking behavior and will work really hard to appear completely normal. Therefore, in order to be properly diagnosed as a girl with ASD, you need to not just observe them, but you also have to talk to them about their personal experience with socializing or managing change in their life.
I know that the most common criticism that I receive on this channel is that men seem to think that women are simply born to fare better with this condition than they are, and that I as a woman simply can't understand certain aspects of the male struggle with this disorder. And I'm willing to listen to some of that criticism given the information that I've just told you. But I do want to say that this notion that you have inside your head, that your life would be significantly easier if you were a woman, and that things would be so astronomically different for you, just isn't true. And I don't appreciate the idea that the tremendous amount of pain and suffering that I have had to face in my life isn't valid because of my sex.
I said eat girls, get the noose to go the trapdoor if they're loose.
As I'm sure most of you guys already know, autistic women are equally as guilty as their male counterparts when it comes to over-identifying with the opposite sex and having the misconception that their pain would be neutralized if they had just been born in a different body.
There's an issue with some teenage girls who are on the spectrum who wind up getting sort of roped into this idea that that's what's wrong with them.
A lot of girls who are high-functioning autistic, they tend to fixate. And they are particularly susceptible to fixating on the idea that they might be a boy when it's introduced to them.
Many people have taken note of the fact that a lot of incel men will eventually become transgender. And this is rooted in the idea that they are becoming the object of desire, that they can't attain the dream girl, so they become the dream girl. And I think that this is a perspective that holds up very well when it comes to women too. I think that a lot of these dorky autistic chicks have spent so much time drawing horrible yaoi fan art that they have slowly begun to identify with the gay dudes that they draw. And they've taken up this identity as some kind of coping mechanism for their own social ineptitudes.
Sometimes I just get sad that I will never experience Lewis giving me a blowjob. Being a famous teen idol in this day and age is horrible. Your ass and throat are the targets of your audience's penis envy rage.
I do want to say that despite my at times mocking tone that I might use in this video, I do ultimately feel an extremely high level of empathy for the women that I'm speaking about. And if I were to give an honest description of how I feel about them, I would say that these are women that are wildly intelligent and creative. And I think that their imaginations are getting the best of them. And they're being led to believe that they've found answers that they've simply just haven't found.
Said eat, girls, get the chair. Really could not pay me to care.
I'm going to end this video on a darker and more serious note. Something that I had said in my previous threat assessment about incels was that I feel as if human sexuality is a massive blind spot when it comes to autistic education, and that I think that some semblance of social skills training may actually help these men build the kind of relationships that they want to have in their lives. And I think that these benefits are applicable to women as well. But tragically, one major focus of these education services would have to be based around self-defense. And that's because, as heartbreaking and as sad as it is, the reality is that women on the autism spectrum are significantly more likely to be victims of sexual assault, rape, and domestic violence. And there's a variety of reasons why this might be the case. But many people think that it's because of the inability to recognize certain red flags in their attackers.
They say this especially for females because, just as we discussed earlier, we strive for connection, and we're aware that we can struggle to make friends and build relationships. So we may choose to be with someone just because they show us a little attention, even if that attention isn't kind or loving.
I should point out, though, that I don't think that that responsibility is entirely on the women in these situations. And I think that men who are interacting in a romantic way with a woman who might be autistic should probably be considerate of this fact when they make certain gestures or innuendos towards them, because these things might not be read properly, and this could lead to some dangerous and risky situations. Despite our, at times, cringy attributes, I ultimately wouldn't categorize women with autism as being a threat. Rather, I think that they are the group that has been threatened and taken advantage of in a variety of ways. And it's important to remember how vulnerable they are to certain negative influences. And it's so painful for me because I can't pull these women away from these things myself. The most that I can do is try to communicate my experiences in a way that might be persuasive for them.
Quick fail, we invite you to swallow some sperm. Chris is straight, we guarantee. There are no girls allowed, unless your boyfriend free. He doesn't like the blackies, and God says gay should die. And if you see the table, well, you better read his